So getting an RGN trailer is your next move, right? You want to make more money, you want to haul bigger loads, you want to run less miles, right? Got it. Well, what if that move might not be the best move? What if that actually hurt your business and can cause you to actually go bankrupt, right? If this is you, if you're about to go purchase a trailer, you definitely need to watch this video first. That being said, let's get straight into the video. What's going on, my people? Once again, welcome back to Trucking the Cash Flow. My name is Marco Perkins, where I come and I break down these videos about trucking businesses all the time and teach you how to cash flow in your trucking business, all right? Once again, I've made millions of dollars in the trucking industry, but I've also went bankrupt a couple times as well and had to start all over from scratch multiple times. So I make these videos that way someone out there who watch these videos and get this information do not go through the things that I personally went through, right? And sometimes I make these videos just kind of talking to myself or my older self or whatever like that, right? So today we're going to talk about Stepdecks and RGNs, right? I'm noticing right now a lot of guys and women are wanting to get into the RGNs, right? I get calls all the time from drivers who wants to come drive for me and with me. They want RGNs. I get calls from lease operators, text messages, emails, right? All the time. And the first thing that they ask for is RGNs, right? People who want to get into the trucking business, they want to get into RGNs, right? Well, what if that that trailer is the trailer that will actually make you go bankrupt, right? What if that trailer is not what you actually thought it was, and you, when you get it, it might not do for you like you thought it would do for you. You might think it's doing for the other person, right? What if you do get the trailer and it's actually not the best trailer to get? That's what we're gonna talk about today. Once again, we're gonna talk about my two favorite trailers. One is gonna be the RGN and one is gonna be the Stepdeck, okay? Both are, full disclosure, both are very good trailers if you know what you're doing and if you have a great plan, logistic system in place to run both of these trailers, all right? But you have to have these things in place, and that's what we're gonna break down today, all right? But first, let me say this. A lot of drivers, a lot of owner operators, they get into these trailers and they just don't know what they're doing, okay? And they don't put in enough work to really, truly find out what they need to do. I know guys right now, they have purchased RGN trailers and they're struggling. All right. When I say RGN trailers, RGN, low boy, RGN stands for removable gooseneck. All right. So I know a guy right now, he just bought one not too long ago and it's sitting. He's not working it, right? But he has to pay for that trailer, right? Why is he not working the trailer? Well, he has no work for the trailer and he's never done anything like that before. So now he has to learn, even though it's like, oh, it's just another type of trailer. Well, for him, it's basically like a brand new business. He has to figure out a lot of these different things that we're gonna go over. But a lot of guys, they don't take into consideration the rate per mile that's needed, the cost of permits, the route planning, the hours of the day that you can run the loads, And the reason why the hours of the day is important, because with the RGN trailers, most of the time, I'm gonna say about 70 to 80% of the time, you will be pulling oversized loads. So if you're pulling oversized loads, then that means you're going to be having permitted loads. Per the permit, per the state, most of these loads cannot drive at night, right? They can only drive daylight hours only. Well, luckily at the time of recording this video, we are approaching and going into the summertime, whatever have you like that. And we're getting anywhere from like 12 to 14 hours a day with sunlight, right? And I live in, South region, Southeast, if that's what you want to call it. And we're getting a lot of sunlight. So we're getting a lot of time that we can like run these trucks and run these loads, right? Another big thing is, just a lot of guys are just misquoting these loads. They're getting, to get these trailers, like an RGN trailer, and they get the loads and they quoting the loads totally wrong. They just don't know how to bid on the loads and they're struggling, right? Now, when I first started out, I bidded on some loads wrong as well, but I worked hard and I done a lot of research and I stayed at it. So I figured it out, right? And the reason why I'm creating this video is because maybe the next person will not have to go through that. I went through it and they could just jump straight past that phase and go straight to making money from gems that they're gonna get out of this video, right? So which one is for you, right? Which trailer will be best for you? Because both of them are good. The Stepdeck is good and the RGN is good, right? And let's go with just a standard RGN. Let's just go with a 2 to 3 axle RGN trailer with 29 in the well. That's like standard, right? Let's go with a standard good Stepdeck, which would be 53 foot Stepdeck, spread axle, tandem axle, sliding axles like that. If you really want to make some good money, you get the one with ramps on it to where you can haul equipment. If you get a Stepdeck with ramps, you're probably going to be making the same money as you would make with RGN, right? Now, you can't haul taller loads and you probably can't haul the same amount of weight that the RGN can haul, but at the same time, you can haul Stepdeck loads and RGN loads because you have the ramps, and the Stepdeck you can haul longer loads. It's not just 29 in the well, okay? Now, so let's go over some things that you can kind of put side by side with the factor of things, and then Stepdeck versus RGN. Too bad I didn't have my digital whiteboard together for this video. I really wanted to pull it out, right? It was my first time trying to use it. I do have a whiteboard in here, but for some reason, the glare, I cannot figure out how to get the glare off. Once I figure it out, I will be pulling out the whiteboard so we can do some demonstrations, right? But let's just go over the number one factor, all right? Load availability between the RGN and the Stepdeck, right? Big difference. When I say big difference, it's a big difference. It is not the same. If you are running spot market freight and maybe you have some direct customers or maybe you have no direct customers, it really doesn't matter that much. The amount of freight that's out there for a RGN and a Stepdeck is a big difference, right? And you might have on average 10 to 50 loads, 50 being a lot of loads within 150 miles for RGN. If you're sitting in Savannah, Georgia, if you're sitting in Houston, Texas, or you're sitting in New Orleans, Louisiana, Memphis, Tennessee, whatever, right? You're gonna have anywhere from 10 to 50 loads, okay? 50 being a lot for an RGN trailer. Typical, standard, 2 to 3 axle, 29 well, basic, all right? And also understand this, the larger that you go with the RGN trailer, meaning more axles, more specialized, the less loads you're gonna have available for you. So that's, 10 to 50 loads. But if you have a 53 foot Stepdeck, you're probably gonna be anywhere from 200 to 500 loads, all right? Yes, big difference, depending on where you're at. Now, I know some of you that's watching this video, they're going to have an expert out there somewhere, a super trucker, that's what I call them. They're going to say, yeah, you're going to have a lot more loads, but you're going to have a lot more trucks. That is true, meaning the step decks. You know, if you get a step deck, the loads are going to go up to 2 to 500 loads in that area, between 150 miles deadhead in that area. But the amount of trucks are going to go up, which is true. But it's still, the load per truck ratio is still going to be more. All right. It's still going to be more. Okay. So that's number one factor that you want to understand with RGNs versus Stepdeck is the load ratio. All right. Definitely take note on that. There are going to be way more loads for a Stepdeck versus a RGN, all right? Rate per mile. The next one, number two factor is the rate per mile factor, right? A lot of people, they get the RGNs and they're used to running for like rate per mile. I don't run my business that way. If I'm doing a rate per mile type thing, that's like I'm quoting a load for its minimum pay, minimum. If you ever hear me on a video, or, you know, if I ever tell a broker anything and I'm like going off the rate per mile, I'm giving a quote from the lowest pay as possible when it comes to RGN. RGNs, specialty loads, specialty freight, right? Specialized loads, well, they're not a regular load. So with that being said, I don't quote them by the mile, okay? I care nothing about the mile when I'm quoting RGN loads. It totally does not matter, right? To me, I'm asking them a series of questions. Number one, what's the dims in weight? What is the dimensions of the load? How much the load weighs? Where is it picking up? Where is it delivering to? What time is it pick up? Is it a crane load? Is it a crane unload? You know, all these different things. You know, what states is it running in? Is it running in a state that where we can, you know, run it at night or not at night? Is it in Texas and it needs a, you know, is it 13 wide to where in Louisiana I need an escort, but in Texas I don't, Mississippi I don't, you know, stuff like that, right? Is it overweight permit and it's going 200 miles in Georgia where the permit is $60 no matter what? Or is it going 200 miles in Louisiana and the permit is going to be about $200-300 or whatever? Or in Texas, no matter what, all of the overweight permits under a certain weight would be $214 versus maybe $30 in another state like Alabama, right? All of these things matters, and it can get very, very tricky, okay? So a lot of people get caught up in the rate per mile with the RGN, but that's really not how you quote loads with RGN. Now you can get, you know, like a base model, you know, kind of start, you know, like a minimum or something like that, kind of like I do. But I probably would stay away from that. And I try not to tell people. They ask me all the time, hey, you know, what rate per mile for the RGNs? I try to stay away from that because if you factor in all of these other things, then the rate per mile is going to be all over the place, right? Where with a step deck, it's simple. You can fire off a quote pretty simple, as long as you have your cost per mile, then you understand your cost per mile, because I talk to a lot of owner operators, and the first question I always ask them is, what is your cost per mile? And they never know. They like 98% of the time, they cannot fire it off. Even if they can't remember it and know it. If you're an owner operator and you have one truck, I guess that's two, right? But if you have one truck, you should be able to memorize your cost per mile, period. You should know that. I memorized some of my cost per miles and I have, you know, 5 trucks, right? Yeah, 4 trucks, I believe. Yeah, 4 trucks. So 4 trucks now. And I can remember at least 2 of them, you know, off the top of my head. What is my cost per mile, right? And I have multiple trucks. But what if it's just you driving your own truck? You should know this. You should remember this, right? So you got to know that. And when you know your cost per mile, then it's going to tell you what you need to run for, right? And with a step deck, you can kind of do that because you're not really running a lot of overweight and crazy oversized loads, okay? Which you should, because you can make more money, but on average, you're not really gonna be doing that, right? So factor 3, right? So factor 3 is the deadhead risk, okay? Meaning with the Stepdeck, you don't really deadhead much, okay? You can kind of stay under 100 miles when it comes down to deadheading, all right? Because they have loads all over, right? You can, a Stepdeck and a flatbed kind of can load the same thing. You can get a flatbed or Stepdeck load, and then you can put a hot shot load on there with it, some partials, stuff like that, right? You can pick up lumber, coils. You can pick up a lot of different things, or you can pick up an oversized. You can pick up equipment. Even if you don't have ramps, if they have ramps, they can load you with equipment, okay? So you have a lot of different places and options to get loads. Well, with the RGN, that's not always the case, all right? We minimum, well, I ain't gonna say minimum, but like within 200 or 250 mile radius, we're looking for loads. Well, with the flatbed, we're probably 100 miles, maybe 150 miles, right? And for those of you that watch my channel and learn from me and check my content out, we calculate all miles, all right? We don't just calculate just loaded miles or empty miles or dead. All of them are going in. When we quote a load, we're quoting it, all of the loads together, specifically for RGNs and all of our other trailers as well, but really for the RGNs, okay? Now, with that being said, if you don't know how to calculate your numbers and calculate time and understand what time of the day you need to load and get unloaded and get your permits, maybe, you know, all these things, deadheading to a load can mess you up with RGNs, okay? And it could be a good load, but you just might not make it there in time. And if you make it there in time, maybe you might not make it there in time to get the load loaded up and still have daylight hours as well, right? So definitely something you need to think about when it's time to pull these loads, you know, RGN versus Stepdeck, right? So number 4, factor number 4, and that's gonna be the driver skills needed, right? Now, I have trained multiple guys straight through a FaceTime, right? They have never done RGN load boards ever before, all right? Some of them that work with me have, some of them haven't. But with that being said, do you actually have what it takes to actually get on the RGN and learn and do it right and do it safely and be able to do it and still make money? Or would you get on this trailer and you have all of these different situations and challenges to overcome, and it's gonna aggravate you, you're gonna be teed off, and now it's gonna affect your whole week, and you're not making money, right? And you probably like quit the RGN and wanna get on another trailer, right? I've dealt with many guys with that as well. You know, in the beginning, they're fired up and they want to get that RGN. They just want it. And then they run it for a couple weeks and they wasn't making the money that they thought they wanted, you know, was gonna make. Not because the money's not there, not because it's not possible, but because it's just hard for them to create the chemistry with the RGN and really learn it and really run the trailer, right? Run that setup, okay? So they swap back over to Stepdecks or flatbeds or whatever like that. So you definitely need to understand that. With the Stepdeck, you know, it's more of a strap and go, chain and go, you know, tarping, no tarping, right? Now, with the RGN, you have to know and understand permits. You have to study them. You have to know routing. You have to know how to follow the route. If you're an operator and you're dispatching yourself, you have to, you know how to order these permits, right? And you have to know the laws and where you can drive, where you can't drive, what time you have to shut down, what time you can, you know, all of these different things. You have to know this if you're actually driving your own truck or you're putting a driver in your truck or whichever one. So the next one is, number 5 is dispatching, which is very, very big when it comes down to the difference between Stepdeck and RGNs, right? A lot of people believe that it's the same thing, and it's just not the same thing. When you call up on a Stepdeck load, you're probably gonna call up something that's gonna sound something like this. Hey, how you doing? I'm looking at your lane coming from Houston, Texas, going over to Atlanta, Georgia. Can I get the details on the load? Yeah, sure. What's your MC? You're probably gonna give them your MC, and then they're gonna come back and say, yeah, it's 44,000 pounds of roof and shingles, strap and go, nothing special. Pick up between 8 and 3, deliver between 8 and 3 the next day. Bam, simple. All you're gonna say is, because you heard that and you're like, oh, well, that's simple. You're gonna say, oh, how much does it pay? And then they're gonna give you a rate. You're gonna calculate the amount of miles and the money, and you're gonna think about your rate per mile, and then you're gonna accept the load or you're not. Typical flatbed step deck load, right? Basic. Well, even a basic load for the RGN is still could be more complicated than that. Let's say they say, oh yeah, same lane. Yeah, you call them up and you say, hey, I'm looking at your load from Houston, but it's the RGN load, right? Hey, I'm looking at your load from Houston, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia. Can I get the details on it? And they say, yeah, I got a 320 excavator, pick up between 8 and 3 and deliver between 8 and 3 tomorrow, TWIC card needed. And you're like, what is a 320 excavator? Now you gotta Google, what you need to fire off this number, right? So now you gotta figure out how wide is it? How heavy is it? You need to figure out, you need to know, or if you don't know, you need to figure out, okay, it's going from Texas to Atlanta. How many states can I run with an oversized at night versus not at night? And I know I keep saying this over and over, but it's a reason for that. Because now it's gonna, mess with your when you can deliver this load and reload with another load and keep going and keep making money. This is how a lot of people get in this game. And for the week, they don't make the money that they were looking to make, right? And it's not because the money's not there. It's just because they don't have a system in place to help them make the money, right? So definitely, if you're dispatching yourself, you need to become a master and an expert in your craft of dispatching and learn how to do this, right? By doing it and by studying and by watching videos and things like that. Or you need to hire an expert or a dispatcher that masters this and understand how to do this so you can get help, all right? So that's the dispatch aspect. Number 6 is this, the break-even margin, right? I hear a lot of entrepreneurs, especially trucking entrepreneurs, sometimes they'll say this and they don't even understand what they're saying. I just want to break even. You tripping. That's not why you have a business. You created a business, you started a business. A business is supposed to be basically something you create that becomes an ATM machine, right? It's supposed to be an asset. It's not supposed to be a liability, all right? Now, on the front end, you put in a lot of work. It might not pay you for a while. Totally understand that, totally get that. Trust me, I know and I understand that. But it's an investment, right? You're investing into this business. So one day this business will take care of you and hopefully your family as well. A lot of people don't really understand the Stepdeck versus the RGN. It's a totally different number most of the time for some people. Some people might have just good credit or they got a trailer that's paid off. And even if that's the case, these are still two different trailers and they take two different ways of dealing with them when it comes down to the financial aspect, right? One is going to have a different tire size on it. So the tires are going to cost a little bit more versus the Stepdeck and the RGN, depending on if the Stepdeck is a standard or is a low pro. Then you have smaller tires, specialty tires. For the Stepdeck, for the RGN, not so much the case, but depending on which RGN you have, it's going to determine which tires you have. So you can't get these tires everywhere. And by you can't get these tires everywhere, guess what? You're going to pay a lot of money on side the road if you do get a blowout with one of these tires, right? So that's something like that. The trailer actually costs more money right now. You can go to Metro trailers and get a Stepdeck for about $800 a month, $750 a month, regular standard Stepdeck, where for the month, where the RGNs will cost $3,000 starting off a month, okay? Or you go to TNT trailer sales or a couple different trailer places and get trailers, but the RGN is going to be probably minimum $2,500 to $3,000 a month on a renting lease. situation where the step deck is going to be like more than half of that. You can get it under $1,000 a month, right? So that's something to think about. You got a lot more into it because you're going to be hauling with the RGN. You're going to be hauling heavier loads. So if you're hauling heavier loads, guess what? You're going to be burning more fuel. You're going to have more permit costs, stuff like that, right? You have to get different type of equipment, right? Bigger chains, you know, instead of the 3/8, you probably going to need like the 1/2 inch, depending on what type of RGN you get. All of these type of things, right? And these things are going to determine how much money you make on the net profit side. Now, so all of that to say this, how do you know which one should you pick? Should you pick the RGN or should you pick the Stepdeck, right? Well, let me tell you, how do you figure this out and which one do you go with, right? Number one is this: are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to put in the work and have patience, right, with this trailer to actually learn this trailer and go through what you need to go through to learn? Because there's certain loads you might not be able to get because you just don't know how to load it. You don't know how to secure it. You don't know what you're doing, right? Do you have the patience to learn? Do you have the patience to sit still when it's time to get a load and they might not have loads for you, but you're waiting on that big money load, or you're waiting on good loads, right? Do you actually have the patience to do that? Or would you, like to rip and run? Would you like to run the step deck? Because the step deck can get a lot of good loads as well. I have one in my fleet right now and we're doing good, right? They can get good loads. They can still do oversized. They can still haul equipment, just maybe not as much as the RGN, right? So are you the type of person that likes to bounce around and move around? You don't like to sit still, sometimes for a day if need be, and you like to just keep loading and keep running. You don't really care about the miles. You don't mind running 2,000 to 3,000 miles a week versus the RGN might run anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000, right? But they might sit more, okay? Think about that. Number two, are you going to do what you have to do to learn to be able to quote loads off the hip, straight out the gate like that, instead of being stuck with the rate per mile, right? Can you actually learn how to quote loads based off the job that you're doing, based off the load, based off the experience that it's going to take to run the load, based off of the permits needed, based off how much time you're going to have to put in this load, right? Are you going to do that, right? If you're going to get the RGN, you need to do that and have patience and learn that and invest in yourself. Do not go straight into it. Quote the loads just like a regular step deck load or whatever like that. If you don't want to really put in that type of work, maybe you should go straight to the step deck and do that and learn the step deck, and maybe that'll help you get to, it should help you get to the RGN, right? The driver part of it, right? Do you understand that it takes a different type of driver to run the RGN, right? The RGN is going to be, once again, 90% of oversized loads, right? Are you prepared to deal with the scale houses, right? DOT, always, because if you haul an oversized loads, guess what? When you get to the scale house, the weigh station, you can't pass it up, right? It's a permitted load. You have to go in. If you get the bypass and you get the green button that says, hey, you can pass it up, guess what? You can't, because you have an oversized load, right? And with RGN, 90% of the time, you're going to have to go into the scale house. So is your equipment up to par? Do you mind always having to go into the weigh station to them to look at your permit and running a risk of getting a DOT inspection, right? Is that something you're willing to do? Are you willing to shut down at night and not be able to run at night? A lot of people think it's like, oh man, I'm good with that, man. I don't have to drive at night. Yeah, but guess what? The day that you get loaded up 5 o'clock in the evening and you only got an hour to drive or 2 hours to drive, or they didn't give you your permits as fast as you wanted them to get them, and you didn't have enough time to deliver your load or get any miles up under you that day, and it's like, you know, Thursday, and you wanted to deliver on Friday, and you like can't, right? And you're probably going to be stuck for the rest of the week. Then you're going to get mad because you couldn't drive at night, right? So something to think about, right? Dispatching, once again, if you're someone that's going to actually put in the time to learn how to quote and dispatch these loads, go ahead, go for the RGN, right? Because it's definitely more money. Or if you're going to hire someone that's going to do this job for you and do a great job, and they have mastered this, right? Then once again, go for the RGN. If you don't want to really deal with that, or you're not looking to really hire anybody to really do that for the Stepdeck for you, for the RGN, then maybe the Stepdeck is good for you because you can do it yourself. Once again, the Stepdeck is not like, I'm not going to say the Stepdeck is just, oh, it's just so easy, because it's not. It's just a big difference from the RGN, all right? Understand that. If you, which you should, doesn't matter which trailer that you get, you definitely need to know your numbers and stay on top of your numbers. You have to know your numbers, and you have to stay on top of your numbers, okay? If you don't do that, you will go out of business. I promise you. You might stay in business a little while, but I promise you, as soon as something happens, as soon as it gets a little shaky and the money's not raining over your head, you will go out of business, all right? So with that being said, check this out. If you are an owner operator and you need some help with this, you're tired of doing it by yourself, you're tired of making ends meet, living check to check. You might have a truck, you might have a trailer, whether it's flatbed, step deck, RGN, whatever, you're in an open deck space, and you're tired of living check to check and struggling. We can help you with that, okay? Whether it's, you know, coaching you and training you to do it on your own, or providing our done for you services. Either way, all you have to do is click the link in the description below and schedule a call. We can jump on a call, a free strategy call with me personally. We'll talk about, go over your business, dissect it, come up with a strategy which is great for you so you can be profitable in your business and start actually cash flowing, all right? Other than that, thanks for watching the video. Until next time, I'll definitely see you in the next video, all right? Peace.